Chapter 1: The Iron Gate. The rain hadn't stopped for hours, hammering the windshield of the rusted Jeep as it crept along the overgrown trail. Elias gripped the wheel tighter, eyes fixed on the silhouette that slowly emerged from the fog, a towering iron gate twisted and blackened with time. Beyond it, the outline of the Marowak sanatorium loomed like a forgotten wound in the landscape. The building had been abandoned for decades, its history buried in rumors of failed experiments and whispers of the patients who vanished. But Elias wasn't here for stories. He was here for proof, and maybe redemption. The gate groaned open with a reluctant screech when he pushed, metal grinding against mossy stone. He stepped through, the crunch of gravel underfoot barely audible over the wind that surged through the trees. The main structure of the sanatorium stood ahead, its windows like hollow eyes staring down at him. A flicker of doubt crawled up his spine, but he suppressed it. He had faced worse. He reminded himself of the photos tucked in his backpack. Grainy images showing movement in the empty halls, shapes that defied explanation. Inside, the smell hit him first. Mildew, rust, something older. The air was thick, pressing in like a weighted blanket. His flashlight beam cut across the entrance hall, revealing crumbling murals, gurneys with torn straps and wheelchairs frozen in place. Every surface bore the signature of abandonment. He moved carefully, camera in hand, recording everything. He whispered into his recorder, voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. Entering the Marowak facility. Initial impressions: structural decay extensive, atmosphere oppressive. As he turned a corner, he found the staff directory still bolted to the wall, names faded but partially legible. One stood out: Dr. Helena Maris. Elias froze. That name shouldn't have been here. It belonged to someone from his past, someone long buried. His mouth went dry. He took a photo and moved on, thoughts spinning. Could it be coincidence? A different Helena? But the name wasn't common. He checked his recorder again, whispering, found reference to Dr. Helena Maris. Investigating further. The silence in the building was alive, shifting subtly with every step. Shadows flickered where they shouldn't, and the flashlight dimmed for a moment as if reluctant. Then came the sound, a faint dragging somewhere above. Elias stiffened, holding his breath. Another sound followed, a soft, rhythmic tapping like fingers on glass. He pointed the flashlight upward, seeing nothing, but the sounds continued. With every second, his heartbeat climbed. Still, he ascended the main staircase, compelled more by the need for answers than by fear. On the second floor, rooms lined the hallway like open mouths. Most were empty, stripped to bones. But one door was closed, its handle rusted but intact. He hesitated before pushing it open. The room beyond had been an office once. Papers lay scattered, brittle with age. On the desk, a nameplate, Dr. Helena Maris. His skin crawled. This wasn't just a coincidence. He stepped inside, searching for anything useful. Then he saw it, a journal, leather-bound, pages yellowed. He opened it carefully, and what he read made his blood run cold. Experiment 7A, Elias. Progressing beyond expectations. Memory suppression successful. Subject unaware of previous cycles. The words blurred as the edges of his vision darkened. He staggered back, the journal slipping from his grasp. A sudden static buzzed in his ears and his legs gave out. For a moment, he saw himself in the window's reflection, but younger, strapped to a table. The image vanished as quickly as it came. Gasping, he crawled out of the room, journal clutched tight. This was wrong. None of this was supposed to be connected to him. But now he knew, he hadn't come to Marowak for answers. He had been brought here. His entire investigation might be part of something he didn't understand, something that had started long before he arrived. He needed to get out, but the hall seemed longer now and the lights flickered violently. He reached the stairwell, breath ragged, only to hear footsteps echoing below, measured, heavy. Someone or something was coming. Panic surged and he turned to flee, but the air thickened, resisting his movements like molasses. The walls vibrated faintly, whispering unintelligible words. As he fought against it, he remembered a phrase from the journal: the subject always returns to the origin. Elias stumbled down the hallway, the journal pressed against his chest like a talisman. Behind him, the footsteps grew louder, joined by a low hum that resonated in his bones. The door at the far end of the hall opened slowly, inviting him into darkness. With nowhere else to run, he stepped through, and the door slammed shut behind him. Chapter 2: The Room Without Walls. The darkness swallowed him whole. Elias stood frozen, the journal still clenched in his trembling hands, as the air grew silent and thick. No walls, no ceiling, just an endless void. He could feel the ground beneath him, solid but featureless, as if the room had stripped itself of identity. Panic threatened to take over, but a dim light flickered in the distance. With each hesitant step toward it, his breath echoed unnaturally loud, as though the darkness amplified every sound. His fingers grazed his chest, reassuring himself that the journal was real, that he was still real. The light revealed a chair, an old, padded thing with leather straps hanging limply from its arms. A single overhead bulb flickered above it, swinging gently without wind. Elias hesitated, then circled it. No walls, but there was a floor, a center, and now a purpose. The bulb cast long, spindly shadows across the void. A speaker crackled from above, its voice familiar and detached. Cycle 12, observation commenced. Subject showing increased resistance to memory bleed. Maintain environmental stimuli. Elias shouted into the dark, "Who are you? What is this?" His voice disappeared into the nothingness, swallowed before it could echo. Another click. The speaker responded, emotionless, "Subject Elias. Repetition yields clarity. Remember." He shook his head violently, backing away. His heart raced. There was no way out. The door had vanished. The only exit seemed to be through whatever this was. He looked down at the journal again, flipping to a torn page. Scribbled in shaky handwriting, "Don't trust the light. Don't sit." Suddenly the shadows moved. Not cast by the chair but by something else. Shapes began to form from the edges of the void, vague humanoid figures flickering like old film. They stood motionless, watching. Elias turned in a circle, surrounded. Each figure wore a mask, porcelain white, emotionless, identical. One stepped forward and pointed at the chair. The speaker crackled again, observation subject stabilized. Initiate protocol Maris. The name struck him like ice water. Dr. Helena Maris. The woman in the directory. The voice from his past. The journal's author. He tried to piece it together, but memories came in fragments. A hospital bed, bright lights, her voice soothing yet clinical. "You're making progress, Elias. The treatment is working." He remembered screaming. He remembered silence. And now he remembered fear. The masked figures moved closer, slow and in sync, pushing him toward the chair. Elias bolted into the void, running blind. The figures didn't follow. They simply turned, always facing him no matter the direction. The void shifted subtly beneath his feet as if trying to guide him back. He stumbled, caught himself, and then saw it. Another door just floating there, unanchored. It had no handle, but a keyhole glinted in the center. He tore back through the journal, pages fluttering, and found a drawing, that same door with a single phrase below it, "Only the unremembered may pass." "What the hell does that mean?" he muttered. He banged on the door, then leaned against it, heart pounding. The void whispered now, a cacophony of fragmented voices all saying his name. Images flashed behind his eyes. A woman crying, a room on fire, someone being strapped down him. A hand touched his shoulder. He spun around. No one. But the mask of one of the figures now lay at his feet. It was cracked. Behind it, an eye had been watching. He picked it up. Something deep within him stirred, a memory trying to surface. He slipped the mask over his face. The moment it settled, the void changed. The chair, the figures, the light, gone. He now stood in a hallway flickering with fluorescent light. He recognized it. Merriwick. 3rd floor. East wing. This was impossible. The door behind him clicked shut, locking with a finality that echoed down the corridor. He ripped the mask off. Still the hallway. He was back. Or had he ever left? Footsteps echoed again, closer this time, from around the corner. A figure emerged, tall, cloaked in hospital scrubs, face obscured by surgical gauze. It carried a scalpel dripping. Elias backed away, his hands fumbling for anything he could use. The figure spoke in Helena's voice, soft and detached. "Cycle 13 begins now." Elias turned and ran again, past rusted doors and broken lights, deeper into the heart of the sanatorium. The journal pulsed with heat in his hand. He didn't know what cycle he was truly in, but one thing was clear. He had been here before. And every time it ended the same way. Until now. Chapter 3, The Echo Corridor. Elias sprinted down the hallway, the journal clutched tight, the gauze-faced figure's scalpel glinting behind him with each flicker of light. Doors slammed shut as he passed, as if the sanatorium itself were sealing his path. The walls pulsed faintly, like they were breathing, absorbing the chaos. He turned a corner and stumbled into a narrow passage he didn't recognize, too narrow for any normal hospital wing. It twisted unnaturally, curving without geometry, vanishing into shadow. The sign above flickered once, Echo Corridor. He slowed, chest heaving. The air was colder here, dense with a metallic tang. His footsteps echoed bizarrely, not in repetition but in distortion. They repeated with mismatched timing, sometimes before he moved, sometimes long after. A sudden burst of static blared in his ears and the voice returned, subject disoriented. Neural realignment holding. Commence memory extraction at node B. Elias shouted, stop this. I'm not your experiment. But even his voice betrayed him. It came back twisted, mocking from behind him. He turned and saw nothing but a stretch of corridor stretching into infinity. The journal's pages fluttered open of their own accord, landing on a page he hadn't seen before. A crudely drawn map of the sanatorium, except parts of it were blurred, changing as he watched. The Echo Corridor wasn't on any blueprint, yet here he was. Something scurried along the ceiling. Elias looked up but saw only shadows. The corridor began to vibrate subtly, and with each tremor, pieces of memory surged through his mind. A woman in a hospital bed, eyes wide with terror. A doctor's voice, calm but rehearsed. His own hand, signing a consent form he couldn't remember writing. The corridor fed him pieces, not enough to understand, just enough to unsettle. He pressed on, trying to find an exit, but the passage looped again, each turn bringing him back to the same cracked mirror hanging on the wall. He stared at his reflection. It was wrong. His eyes were too dark, too deep. Behind his shoulder, a figure appeared. He turned, nothing there. Look back. The figure in the mirror remained. It wore the cracked porcelain mask. As he watched, it raised its hand slowly and pointed forward. He obeyed, turning to follow the direction. A door appeared in the wall, no frame, just a slit of light. He pushed through. Inside was a room unlike the rest. Clean, clinical. White walls. A single table with 2 chairs. On one side sat a woman, her back to him, coat pristine, hair pinned tightly. Elias, she said without turning. Please sit. His feet moved without command. He sat. The journal landed on the table between them, open to a blank page. She turned. It was Helena. Not aged. Not distorted. Just as he remembered. Cold eyes, precise voice. This is your final cycle. We need resolution. He slammed his fist on the table. What the hell are you talking about? What is this place? What did you do to me? She didn't flinch. You agreed to this. Voluntarily. We were trying to fix you. But each iteration collapses further. You're rejecting the treatment. Now you're becoming aware. And awareness is dangerous. Elias blinked. The room flickered. For a moment, the table became a gurney. Her coat, a blood-stained apron. He stood abruptly, backing toward the door, but it was gone. The walls shimmered and peeled away like wet paper. The floor cracked beneath him. Helena's voice rang out, louder now. Cycle integrity failing. Containment breach imminent. Reset required. He screamed as the room folded inward, gravity tilting. The journal burst into flame, words vanishing into smoke. Then, everything stopped. Elias opened his eyes. He was back in the hallway. Merriwick Sanatorium. First floor. Front desk in sight. Was it a dream? A vision? He looked down. The journal was still in his hand, charred around the edges but real. A single word was now scrawled across the cover. Remember. He heard the sound again. Not footsteps this time. Breathing. Slow. Close. He turned slowly. The gauze-faced figure stood behind him. This time it held no scalpel. It simply lifted one finger to where its lips should be and whispered, She's listening. And the lights went out. Chapter 4. The Listening Room. Total blackness. Elias froze, every muscle tensed, the whisper still echoing in his ears. She's listening. His breath hitched, caught in his throat. Something about the darkness felt predatory, like it had weight and will. He dared not move. The gauze-faced figure was gone, or at least silent. Then came the softest sound, a creaking subtle as a breath, not from a door but from above, like someone shifting in place, observing from the ceiling. He inched backward, each step carefully measured. The journal, hot moments before, was now ice-cold in his grasp. The corridor around him didn't return with the light. Instead, a single blue glow blinked into existence behind him. He turned. A narrow passage stretched forward, bathed in low, blue light. The word listening was written on the wall in smeared charcoal. He followed it. As he walked, the walls closed in tighter. Speakers embedded in the ceiling crackled to life, playing distorted voices. Laughter, weeping, screaming, each one his own. fractured echoes of himself from unknown moments. "I didn't know," one sobbed. "Please make it stop," begged another. Elias gritted his teeth trying to block it out, but the corridor seemed to feed on his reaction. The louder his thoughts, the more intense the playback. He stumbled into a circular chamber lined with mirrors. In the center stood a wooden chair and an antique reel-to-reel recorder, still turning. He approached it cautiously. A microphone protruded from the device and beside it a placard read, "Confess to proceed." He stepped closer. His reflection stared back at him from every angle, each one slightly delayed, slightly wrong. One smiled when he didn't. He leaned toward the microphone, heart pounding. "I don't know what this place is. I came looking for truth. I didn't know He stopped. The recorder clicked off. One of the mirrors shattered violently, revealing another hallway, but not before one of his reflections lingered, moving independently, then vanishing with a twisted grin. The path ahead was darker still, pulsing red with each of his heartbeats. The journal vibrated in his hands. New writing formed on its open page. "You were the listener. You were the watcher. Your eyes are not your own." He dropped it instinctively, but the book hovered mid-air, pages flapping like wings. The red pulse from the hallway intensified. At the far end, a door appeared, thick, metallic, with a single small window at eye level. It hissed open slowly. Inside was a control room. Screens lined every wall, each displaying different rooms of the sanatorium. Most were empty. Some showed static. But a few showed Elias. Different versions of him in different cycles. One was crying. One was screaming. One was sitting in the padded chair, utterly still. He turned away, bow rising in his throat. On the central console, a single button blinked. End cycle. A voice behind him. "You can stop it. But not without knowing what you began." Helena. Her voice, but not her presence. He spun around, no one there. But the chair in the center of the room turned slowly on its own. Another voice, his own this time, whispered, "You volunteered." Again and again. Until you forgot. He approached the console, finger trembling above the button. On the screen, one version of himself stood up. Looked directly into the camera. Spoke silently. Elias couldn't hear, but he could read the lips. "Don't trust the ending." The lights in the control room flickered, and then a mechanical noise filled the chamber, like something massive awakening below. The walls shuddered. From the floor, another chair rose, identical to the one on screen. It faced him, waiting. The journal landed gently on the seat, open to a fresh page. At the top, a title had been etched in crimson ink, Cycle 14. Chapter 5, Cycle 14. The word pulsed on the page, Cycle 14. Elias stared at it, heartbeat thundering in his ears. The control room's vibrations deepened, rattling the floor beneath his boots. He backed away from the journal, unwilling to sit in the waiting chair. The screens flickered again. The versions of himself began to degrade, faces melting, bodies twitching in unnatural ways, movements looping as if trapped in corrupted footage. The air crackled with heat. A siren wailed somewhere below. He turned to flee, but the door had vanished. Steel walls closed in. A new screen lowered from the ceiling, larger, older, coated in dust. It blinked once and displayed a single image, a child, Elias, in a hospital bed. A younger Helena beside him, placing electrodes along his scalp, her smile unreadable. The screen shifted to grainy text, "Initiate Cycle 14, Lucid Containment." Then the chair behind him screeched backward. The journal snapped shut and launched itself into his chest. Elias gasped, staggering. His fingers curled around it instinctively, and the moment he touched it, reality buckled. The lights blinked off and on, and suddenly he wasn't in the control room anymore. He stood outside, in front of Marowak Sanatorium, as if returned to the beginning. Rain fell hard just as it had before. The iron gate loomed in the mist. But something was off. His reflection in a puddle blinked before he did. He whispered, "No, this isn't real." But the world didn't respond. It only waited. His jeep sat parked, engine humming, door ajar. The journal remained in his hand. Pages flipped without wind, stopping on a new entry. Watch for the break. Memory bleed imminent. Then he saw her. Helena standing at the gate, not as a ghost, but as she had looked years ago, young, clinical, untouched by time. She smiled. "Welcome back, Elias. We've missed you." "Where am I really?" he demanded, approaching slowly. Rain soaked through his jacket. "Tell me what this place is." Her smile faded. "You created it," she said softly. "In your mind. In your need." Each visit peels back another layer. We're at the core now. The marrow. She turned and walked through the gate. He followed, compelled not by reason but by memory, or the illusion of it. Inside, the sanatorium was no longer decayed. Lights buzzed. Floors gleamed. Staff moved about like phantoms, faces blurred. It was operational. Elias moved among them unseen. Every corner sparked recognition. A nurse passed through him, whispering, "Cycle 14 is the last. You must remember before it ends." He stumbled into an operating room. There on the table lay his body, wired, bandaged, unconscious. A mirror above reflected him watching himself. He stepped back in horror. The Helena beside the table turned and met his gaze. "You've looped too long. Your consciousness is fragmenting. This was your choice, Elias. To bury the guilt. To reshape it. But memory always bleeds through." The journal in his hand burst into flame, then disintegrated. A sudden cold swept through the room and the vision dissolved. He was back in the chair. The control room again. The same blinking button. End cycle. Elias shook, no longer certain where he was, what he was. The screen now showed only one version of him. Present. Awake. Watching. He pressed the button. The world blinked. A hallway. Plain. White. Helena at a desk, scribbling notes. She looked up. "Do you know your name?" Elias opened his mouth, but only static emerged. His hands trembled. No journal. No mask. No control. She smiled kindly. "That's okay. Let's start again." The lights flickered once. Somewhere deep inside him, a scream echoed, but not out loud. The sanatorium waited. Cycle 15 began. Chapter 6, The Guilt Room. The room was sterile. White walls, white floor, white ceiling. Elias sat in a straight-back chair, hands resting obediently on his lap. Across from him, Helena observed through thick glasses, a clipboard balanced on her knee. Her smile was warm but unnerving, like someone practicing empathy rather than feeling it. "We're making progress," she said, voice smooth. "This time you arrived with less resistance. That's good." He tried to speak, but his tongue felt thick, his throat raw. He looked down at his arms, smooth, unscarred, but they didn't feel like his. A soft hum vibrated the floor. Something was beneath them, something vast and mechanical. Helena scribbled something. "You remember what happened in room 217, don't you? Let's revisit that. It's important." She pressed a button, and the white wall behind her blinked to life, transforming into a projection. The image, a small hospital room dimly lit, a child in bed. Elias flinched. "No," he rasped. The word felt foreign, like it had been buried. But the projection continued. Helena appeared in the video, kneeling beside the bed. Elias, younger, gaunt and hollow-eyed, stared ahead blankly. Electrodes covered his scalp. Machines beeped in soft rhythm. Helena's recorded voice whispered, "This is necessary. This is how we cleanse the guilt." "Stop," Elias whispered. Helena in the room tilted her head. "Guilt is memory you've refused to process. But the mind stores everything. You've been locking it away, building the maze. We're just walking you through it." She rose and opened the door behind her. "Room 217 awaits." Against every instinct, Elias stood and followed. The hallway beyond was narrow, dimmer than the sterile chamber. Fluorescent lights blinked overhead. At the end, a metal door bore the number 217. As they approached, it opened on its own. Inside was a small bedroom, familiar. A battered bed, blood-stained floor tiles, drawings pinned to the wall. Crayon sketches of screaming faces, buildings on fire, a figure standing alone in a field. Elias froze. "I've been here," he muttered. Helena nodded. "You never left. This is the core. The guilt room." Suddenly he was alone. Helena vanished. The lights dimmed. The drawings began to move, mouths opening, eyes blinking. Whispers rose from the walls, familiar voices overlapping. "You left him there. You didn't scream. You wanted it to happen." He dropped to his knees, covering his ears, but the guilt was not sound, it was sensation. Heat behind his eyes. Pressure on his chest. He remembered fire. A locked door. A child screaming for help. He staggered to his feet. One of the drawings peeled from the wall and floated before him. A crayon portrait of a boy. His brother. Elias reached for it and the room shook violently. A hidden panel in the wall slid open, revealing a corridor of mirrors. He entered, heart pounding. Each mirror reflected a different version of himself. A coward, a savior, a liar, a victim. Each one pointed toward the same endpoint. A door with no handle, marked only with a smear of blood. As he approached, the mirrors shattered simultaneously, cutting his arms and face. Blood pooled beneath his feet but vanished as quickly as it appeared. The door opened inward. He stepped through, and found himself back in room 217. But this time the child in the bed looked directly at him. "You said you'd come back," the boy whispered. "I tried," Elias whispered, tears in his voice. "I was scared." The boy smiled sadly. "So was I." The machines flatlined. The room disintegrated into dust. Elias stood once more in the white room, alone. The clipboard on the chair read, "Progress recorded. Memory breach successful. Prepare for escalation." The lights flickered. Somewhere deep within the facility, another siren began to wail. Cycle 15 wasn't just repeating. It was evolving. Chapter 7, The Breach Protocol. The siren screamed, sharp and irregular, as if the building itself were panicking. Red lights strobed across the white chamber, casting long, jerking shadows that snapped with each flash. Elias stood frozen, the clipboard still in his hands. "Prepare for escalation." The words echoed louder than the alarm. A crack rippled through the ceiling above, spreading like a vein. Then a voice, mechanical, urgent, boomed through unseen speakers. "Containment breach in Sector Theta. Initiating Protocol Maris. All subjects return to base cognition." The door burst open on its own. Elias ran. Hallways distorted around him, shifting like they were resisting his direction. Walls bent, floors stretched. He pushed forward, deeper into the heart of the facility. Each step triggered motion sensors, turning on harsh white lights in sequence. Sirens now layered with distorted whispers. Fragments of his own memories twisted and overlapping. "You knew. You watched. You agreed." He reached a steel door labeled Theta. No handle, just a biometric panel. The journal, somehow returned to his hands, buzzed and opened to a page filled with code. A single instruction blinked, "Blood unlocks." Without hesitation, he pressed his palm against the panel. It stung instantly, a thin needle piercing his skin. The door hissed, slid open, and a wall of heat hit him. Inside, Sector Theta was unlike the rest of Marowak. It looked unfinished, industrial. Exposed pipes, dangling wires, floors slick with condensation. Lights flickered overhead. A large cylindrical chamber sat at the center, surrounded by broken terminals and cracked observation glass. And inside that chamber, floating, restrained by cables and humming machines, was him. Another Elias. Head shaved. Eyes closed. Chest rising and falling in mechanical rhythm. He approached the glass slowly. "What is this?" he whispered. A nearby console flickered to life. Helena's voice, pre-recorded, filled the space. "Subject Elias. Cycle 15 in progress. Memory graph stable. Lucid breach risk high. Recommend immediate extraction or loop reset." Another voice overlapped, his own distorted. "I agreed. I needed to forget. But now I remember too much." Suddenly alarms changed pitch. The other Elias twitched. His eyes snapped open and locked with Elias's. The glass shattered outward. Water and cables spilled across the floor. The second Elias gasped violently, then stood, trembling, eyes wide with terror and recognition. "It's you," he said. "The original. The first mind. They cloned your guilt." Before Elias could respond, another tremor shook the room. A wall collapsed, revealing masked figures pouring in, identical to the ones from the void, but now armed with syringes and restraints. "Protocol Maris in full effect," they chanted. "All fractured iterations must be purged." Elias grabbed his alternate self. "Run." They sprinted into the machinery maze, dodging sparks and falling beams. The facility was tearing itself apart. Voices echoed through the crumbling metal, some pleading, some laughing. One whispered in his ear, "You were never meant to wake up." They reached a service elevator. Inside, Elias smashed the control panel. The door shut just as the figures reached it. As the elevator rose, the second Elias turned to him, eyes hollow. "We were the cure to someone else's disease. A mind split to contain what couldn't be faced. But it's failing. We're all bleeding through." He opened his hand, revealing a key. "This opens the room of origin." That's where it began. Elias took it, staring at the worn brass. The elevator stopped. The door opened to pitch black. Together they stepped into the dark. Cycle 16 had no protocol, only truth. Chapter 8, The Room of Origin. The blackness surrounding them was absolute, but Elias felt the key's cold weight in his palm, grounding him. Beside him, the alternate Elias stood silent, breathing steady despite the chaos they'd escaped. A faint blue glow ignited under their feet, revealing a spiral of ancient stone steps descending deep into the earth. On the wall, a plaque corroded with time read, "Origin." They descended in silence, the only sound their synchronized footsteps echoing into eternity. As they walked, memories flooded Elias's mind, not visions but sensations. The scent of fire, the weight of chains, the cold certainty of betrayal. He felt them without knowing if they were his or borrowed. The lower they went, the stronger the pull. It was like gravity had inverted, drawing them toward something below, something old. Finally, they reached a door, ancient, stone-framed, etched with symbols that pulsed faintly as he approached. The key slid into the lock without resistance. A low chime resonated through the air as the mechanism turned. The door didn't open outward nor inward, it dissolved. Beyond it, a chamber vast and silent as death. The walls were covered in mirrors, each one fogged, cracked, or blackened. In the center, a single surgical chair, surrounded by 4 lines and cerebral interface cables. Elias stepped in, pulse quickening. The second Elias stayed at the threshold. "This is where they copied you," he said softly. "Extracted your trauma. Manufactured versions to house it. But it didn't work. The mind fights back. Guilt leaks. The cycles were containment." Elias turned, disbelief in his eyes. "They used me to build this?" His other self nodded. "You wanted to forget. They offered a way. But each copy degrades. We remember. Eventually, we all remember." One of the mirrors flickered to life. A recording began to play. Elias saw himself, strapped into the chair, eyes wide, mouth moving silently. Helena entered, clipboard in hand. "Initiate origin protocol," she said. "Subject Elias. Conscious erasure sequence, trial 1. Begin extraction." Sparks flew. Screams, his own, echoed through the room. Elias staggered back. The mirror shattered. "You weren't sick," the second Elias said. "You were the cure. They needed a mind capable of absorbing guilt, so others wouldn't feel it. You volunteered to carry it." Elias stared at the chair. "Why would I do that?" The answer came not from his twin but from within. A voice, familiar, broken. "Because you loved her." Another mirror lit. Helena, younger, crying beside a hospital bed. A child, her son, unresponsive. "We can't save him," a doctor said. "Unless..." Helena looked at Elias, desperate. A flood of memory crashed through him. He remembered the fire. He remembered saving her son, taking the guilt, begging them to take it from him. He remembered the deal. Elias dropped to his knees. It was real. "I made this." The other version of him walked forward, hand outstretched. "We all did. But it ends here. It has to." Elias stood slowly. They moved toward the chair together. He sat. The cables attached themselves. The room dimmed, mirrors blinking like eyes awakening. A voice overhead, "Final integration sequence, active. Host memory aligned. Fractured identities synchronizing." Elias clenched the arms of the chair. Pain surged, like burning through his veins, but he didn't scream. He welcomed it. Behind closed eyes he saw all the cycles. All the rooms. All the versions of himself trying to escape what was never meant to be escaped. Then stillness. When Elias opened his eyes, he stood alone in the chamber. The chair was gone. The mirrors reflected only him now, whole. On the floor lay the brass key, now rusted. He picked it up. The exit had returned. Cycle 17 didn't begin. It awaited his command. Chapter 9, The Final Memory. Elias stepped through the threshold, brass key clenched tight, into a corridor lit by nothing but his own presence. The walls glowed faintly around him, reacting to each step. The silence was complete, not the absence of sound but the anticipation of it. Ahead, a final door. Larger than any before. Above it, etched into steel, were 3 words, "Last known truth." As he approached, the key dissolved in his hand. The door opened without touch. Inside, the chamber resembled no part of the sanatorium he remembered. It was a circular room, cathedral-like, with walls covered in shifting script. His thoughts, his words, his buried screams, etched in light. In the center, a massive archive machine pulsed with golden energy, its screens displaying fractured scenes from his life. The fire, Helena's child, room 217, the mirror corridor. Above it all, suspended like a puppet, was the first Elias, his true self, motionless. A soft hum signaled the awakening of the archive. A voice, his voice, began narrating. Cycle 1, guilt defined. Cycle 7, identity ruptured. Cycle 14, truth attempted. The archive's light focused into a beam, scanning Elias's eyes. Final integration request acknowledged. To proceed, memory must be accepted in full. He felt something pierce his temple, not physically but inside, like a hook pulling back a curtain. The memories came without mercy. He saw Helena's son trapped in the burning hospital, Elias running through smoke, dragging the boy to safety, then turning to see the others he couldn't save. He remembered his breakdown, the offer, the agreement, a life spent carrying the guilt of others. Being fractured, copied, looped endlessly to contain what others could not bear. Every cycle, every hallucination, every distorted voice, refractions of pain redistributed. The suspended version of himself opened its eyes. Slowly, it descended to the floor, becoming solid, breathing, real. I was the first, it said. You are the last. We are whole now. The chamber dimmed, and the script on the walls began to rewrite itself. No longer loops of trauma, but clear, linear narrative. The story of Elias. Not the experiment. Not the vessel. The man. Then Helena's voice filled the room, live, not recorded. You weren't supposed to reach this far. She stepped into the chamber from behind the archive. Time hadn't touched her. She looked exactly as he remembered. You were supposed to dissolve, not evolve. But you held on to the guilt. It stabilized you. Elias faced her, calm now. You lied to me. All of us. She nodded. Because I had to. No one else could do what you did. You carried more than anyone. You became more than human. The archive's pulse slowed. The suspended Elias stepped beside him, silent. Together they faced Helena. She raised a device, something between a detonator and a control switch. This place can't remain. The cycles have degraded. The system is collapsing. Elias stepped forward. Then let it. But I choose how it ends. He reached for the core of the archive, a glowing heart of data and memory. The second Elias joined him. As their hands touched the core, the entire chamber vibrated. Helena shouted something, but her voice was lost in the rising hum. The walls cracked. The words shattered into light. The memory of everything began to fragment. But Elias felt peace. For the first time in countless iterations, he knew who he was. Not a vessel, not a test subject, not a copy. A man who made a choice. A man who carried the unbearable so others could live clean. As the chamber exploded into white light, he closed his eyes and whispered, "No more cycles." And the system obeyed. The Marowak sanatorium collapsed inward. Only one chapter remained. The one unwritten. Chapter 10, the unwritten chapter. Silence. Not the artificial kind built into observation rooms or padded cells, but a real, natural silence. Elias stood in a field at dawn, dew shimmering on tall grass, the horizon stretching infinitely in every direction. No walls. No wires. No mirrors. He breathed deeply, and for the first time in memory there was no echo, no delay, no reflection. Just air and sky. He looked down. Bare feet. Warm soil. In his hand, the journal, now empty, its pages clean. A single tree stood in the distance, gnarled and ancient, casting a long shadow across the ground. He walked toward it. No urgency. No panic. Just a quiet pull, as though it had waited for him. When he reached it, he found a stone beneath its roots. Carved into it were the words, "All that you carried ends here." Elias sat, placing the journal atop the stone. Wind moved through the branches above him. The sky shimmered subtly, not like a glitch, but like a curtain gently shifting in the wind. A presence formed beside him. Not the other Elias, not Helena, but something older. Himself, perhaps. A version beyond the cycle, beyond the machine. This figure did not speak. It only looked at him with understanding. Elias nodded. "I know now," he said softly. It was never about forgetting. It was about surviving long enough to remember with grace. The field responded, golden light spilling over the hills. The system, the cycles, the endless repetitions, they were gone. Buried in the collapse of Marowak, in the decision to hold rather than hide. Elias felt no fear now. No guilt. It hadn't vanished, it had transformed. He carried it still, but now as memory, not torment. And in that memory there was value. There was meaning. He opened the journal. On its first blank page, words began to appear. Not typed, not printed, but written in his own hand. A story not about cycles or experiments, but about a boy who ran into fire to save someone, and the life that followed. A life of pain, yes, but also of love, of strength, of truth. The pages filled, one by one, with clarity. As he wrote, he noticed the world did not vanish. It became more real. The air richer. The tree firmer. He was not dissolving into the void but stepping fully into existence. The place he stood was no afterlife, no simulation. It was the place untouched by guilt's machinery, the soul's unfiltered landscape. The mind healed. He felt something warm on his cheek. A tear. Not of sorrow but of release. He closed the journal. On its cover, embossed now in gold, was the title, The Unwritten Chapter. He stood. The presence beside him faded into mist. The tree stood tall, sentinel and witness. Behind him a path appeared, dirt pressed by footsteps not yet made. Elias walked it, each step forward a declaration. That he existed, that he endured, that he chose truth. The horizon welcomed him, not as a cycle's end but as a life's beginning. There would be no return to Marowak. No more mirrors. No more experiments. Just memory transformed. And as the sun rose fully, Elias vanished into its light. The story ended, not with a scream, not with a reset, but with a breath. Free at last. The end.